right, it is time to share what I have been watching recently on TV. It's a check-in, it's a catch-up, it's in all the things. Hey everyone, it is Shannon, and I'm super excited to be here and to share with you this video. This is going to be about some of the TV that I have been watching on streaming recently, and I'm also going to do another video about the shows, the 2021 shows that I watched sort of like in your on live television. I'm not sure if that's going to go up first or this is going to go up first. If it's already up, I will put it in the cards. Otherwise, it's something to look forward to in the near future. So I have 6 shows that I finished since the last video like this that I have done, and I'm just going to share how I did. Some of these I watched the whole season, some I watched a part, some I caught up, some are miniseries. Wow, this is just a real grab bag. As is often the case. My goodness, I think all of my videos are grab bags. Alright, first up, I watched season 1 of Staged. Oh wow, what a joy this was. Okay, so Staged is with David Tennant and Michael Sheen. It is I'm trying to what would be the right way to describe it? Is it a parody? Is it a satire? It's a comedy. But it's a dramedy. I would say it's a dramedy or a tragicomedy. It's based, they're playing themselves during COVID, during self-isolation, stay at home situation. And so it is Zoom calls, and they were working on a show together, like on a theater production together, and the director kind of is like, well, why don't we just do it anyway? So that's sort of the premise of it. It's very funny, it's very tongue-in-cheek, isn't tongue-in-cheek? No. It's funny, but it does have a bit of a darker tragicomedy type of edge to it. I've only watched season 1 or series 1 because it's British. I watched it on Canopy, so if you have Canopy, this first season is available that way. So I haven't seen the second season, don't know anything about how that is, but this was really, really wonderful. I was glad that after I watched a couple episodes, I went to look up because I was like, wow, they're kind of mean to each other, and I was a little confused about that. So then once I realized that they were playing themselves, and it was a bit more of a tragicomedy parody satire or something like that, I was a little more comfortable because I was not feeling very comfortable with the fact, especially with Michael Sheen, he felt like pretty mean, and I'm like, he's one of my favorite actors. I was like, I can't handle it. I can't handle it if he's like mean. So I'm glad that I hopefully he was just, playing a certain version of himself, and yeah, this was a delight because this is one of the things that I loved about this, and one of the reasons why it resonated with me is that it was talking about theater, it was talking about acting, and that is something that I enjoy a lot. And so it like anything it really is in a weird way a sort of like fake behind the scenes kind of situation, but also centered in the reality, I guess mostly of last year. But yeah, it was a delight. If you like theater, if you like acting, if you like behind the scenes at all, if you like either of these actors, I would definitely recommend it. And it was a lot of fun, and I hope I can see the second season at some point. So that was a huge win. Also, 10 years late, I finally watched Sherlock. Oh my gosh, I am so late to this party. Now, I don't usually watch procedurals. This is arguably not, I don't know if you would call this procedural. But I remember when this started and how much people loved it, and everyone loving Benedict Cumberbatch, and it just took off by storm. But I never watched it, and I don't think it was available. It was before, or it was on a premium service at the time. TV has changed so much in the past 10 years. But this was actually going off Netflix, and I noticed that, and so I decided to watch the whole thing. I watched all 3 seasons plus the Christmas episode within 1 month, and that was quite an effort given the fact that most of the episodes I think are an hour and a half. And that's one of the weird things about this series, is that it is the episodes really are sort of like movies, so it takes an entire case, and but it takes its time. I would have to say with this one, the acting is amazing. Really, really amazing. And I loved, is it Martin Freeman who plays Watson? Benedict Cumberbatch, yeah. He's great. He's really great. He's a really interesting take on Sherlock, and there's some things that I'm not quite sure how I feel about what they're saying about the character, or are they saying that about the character, or is that interpretation of the character at this time. It is contemporarily set, which is interesting. They had lots of nods to things about like mystery procedural type stuff. Maybe not lots, but they had enough that were really kind of funny. But it's also one of the challenges with this one is, to be honest, I would say like neither character is particularly likable, and I keep on wondering about this. It keeps on coming up sometimes in my reading and sometimes in watching, like this idea of likability and how important or isn't important. Like I'm just struggling with that as a question. Not struggling, I'm questioning that. Is it, how important is that? Now, I feel like it's a little more important in TV and movies, maybe not, I'm not sure. But Sherlock he's very gruff, like, and I think that's part of the character, generally speaking. But he's very impatient with other people who aren't as smart as him, and that kind of thing. And like, it's a little rude, right? Like not even a little rude, it really is kind of rude. But is it not? Does that make him like not likable? I don't know. And then even Watson, it's an interesting, as far from, I've read like the first 4 or 5 books plus seen many iterations. It's a really interesting take on the character, but again, sometimes I didn't find he was very likable. And again, I was questioning, is that important? So yeah, and then as the series goes on, there are some other characters that they have. I actually really loved the interpretation of some of the other characters that are prominent in any sort of Sherlock franchise. And I really, really love them. I don't want to spoil anything, although I really honestly feel like I'm like the last person to watch this. But I will say, like, for me, like this is one thing that it is tough, because I felt like it is without question quality, but I didn't always enjoy it. And that's because the level of tension was so high so often, especially as the series progresses, and then the episodes are an hour and a half. That is just, it was a lot. And for me, I did watch, as I said, all of it within like a month. It's not, most people watch this over like 4 or 5 years or something like that. So not ideal circumstance. But actually, I think the draw to it was when I watched a Shakespeare, I watched King Lear with Anthony Hopkins as King Lear. And there was someone in that, I can't remember the actor's name, I'll leave it down below, and he's in Sherlock. And he was so good in that King Lear, that's actually what tipped me to watching Sherlock, or to be curious about it. And then I saw it was leaving Netflix, and then I did it. And he was a supporting character to the show, and he was formidable. It was really weird to see it in that order, and the performances are so different that he is now, I should put him on the list of actors that I want to follow their work, because wow. Very wow. So yeah, so I finally, as I said, 10 years later, finally got to it. And then I also got to an in-year show, and so I watched the second part of Lupin. So this is a French crime heist mystery series. The first part I think came out late last year, and then the second part came out this summer. Now that both parts are out, I would recommend definitely watching them together. I thought, as like part 1 and 2 sort of feel like one whole season. And I think I might have gone back and rewatched season 1, or maybe just the finale, because I think I started part 2 and I was like, ooh, I want to be a little clearer on this. I can't remember what I did. I really, really love this. I love the, is it Omar Sy who plays the protagonist? It's really great. It's just such a great series. It's based on a series of novels that were sort of like a counter to Sherlock, so there's kind of lots of mystery. Wow, who thought there'd be so much mystery in here? And French novels from that were a bit of a response apparently to the Sherlock Holmes stories. So yeah, this is great. I honestly don't want to say too much about this one, because it is like a longer arc mystery, and it is actually quite intertwined with the entire Lupin book series, and they do talk about it quite specifically, like things that happen in particular books. Sometimes that bothers me, but for some reason it didn't. Maybe it's because it's mystery and I am less inclined to read mystery novels. I would like to start this one, but it was really, it was a little bit hard to determine which is the first one, and it's like Arsène Lupin, the Gentleman Burglar, or I don't know if that's the series name, I can't remember off the top of my head, but it was a little hard to determine. There are some of the Lupin novels are on Scribd, but I can't remember if the first one is, at least in ebook, which is my preferred reading format for, I don't listen to fiction on audio. So yeah, so anyway, highly recommend Lupin. If you haven't watched it, definitely watch it. It was for me, I didn't know anything going into it, so that's what I would recommend. I really, really enjoyed it. So that was great. Then, oh wow, was I going to talk about this? Okay, let's go to this one first because I have one more mystery. And so I also watched The Investigation. I watched this on Crave. It says HBO, but it's actually a Danish show. And this one was tough. I'm not going to say too much about this. This one is actually based on an actual case that happened that I didn't know that going in. So I was watching this, it felt like it was going to be a procedural, then it felt very much not like that's what was happening. It was very dramatic, it was very weighty, and I was like, wow, this is a very different tone for like a long arc procedural. And then as it turned out, I can't remember if I researched it during or after, but then I recognized and found out that it's actually based on a particular event, and it is quite disturbing, the event. So it is a bit similar to something that happened in Ontario, Toronto-ish, in the mid-90s, early 90s, probably early 90s. So when I started putting those pieces together, I started backing, like questioning whether or not it was a good choice, because I just like, this is Danish, it has a couple of the actors that were in Borgen. I was excited about that. I was excited it was available. I started watching it. I was like, wow, this is really heavy stuff. And it makes sense that it's heavy stuff because it's about a very disturbing true crime. So it was a bit of a tough watch, and I don't know if I can recommend it because of that. So it's, your mileage may vary. And I think they actually did a really interesting choice in terms of what they chose to focus on. And so this felt more like it was saying something in particular, and I appreciated that message after I understood all of the pieces, which I didn't have while I was watching it. So it was a tough watch. It was a really, really tough one, but it was very impactful, that's for sure. And yeah, so, and I don't want to, if I say more, there's a couple of things I feel like, oh, I should say this, and I'm like, I don't want to spoil it, even though it is based on true events. Everyone has a different gauge on things. You can easily, look up what the premise is. So yeah, let me know if you've seen it. I haven't heard anyone talking about this one. I was so excited because I had just finished Borgen, like at some point semi-recently, and I was like, oh, there's a Danish show available on Crave, and then I watched it. I was like, wow, I was not ready for that. It was so heavy. So it's only about 6 episodes, but yeah, so it's a tough one. Let me know if you've seen it. Then another one that was also very emotional, but had a totally different genre, so science fiction series, I actually finally watched. And normally I don't even talk about these sort of like in year or anything like that because I'm so scared of spoilers, but I loved it so much, so I am going to share that I actually watched season 1 of Picard, or Star Trek Picard. Wow, this was extraordinary. This was, to me, as someone who has seen every episode of The Next Generation multiple times and who didn't even like the series starting off, and it took me till season 3 and then going back, and now I've seen it all, just like a lot. It's not, the first couple seasons aren't great, it's just true, but it warms on you, like it does warm my heart. But this show about Picard, there were so many things about it that I loved. There were so many moments, there were so many choices, the themes, There were particular episodes. I'm not going to say anything about the plot or anything like that because I don't want to go there. I'm not analyzing it. I just had a very strong emotional reaction to this show and appreciated it down to my core. And I think it's part of it is because I've seen The Next Generation so much, and I think also part of it is because so much of what we see in terms of science fiction, fantasy, adventure type stuff, not adventure necessarily, but sci-fi fantasy in the past not even couple years, like 10 years, so much of it has been so dark. And not saying this is light and fluffy or anything like that, but just to see a different point of view, a different perspective, a different message, as opposed to just going as dark and as harsh as you can. There are hard things that happen in this one, no question, without question, but that's not the focus. The point isn't to go as hard as you can go or as tough as you can go. It had something else. It had a different message, and it actually had a message. You know what I mean? And I love the character Picard, not gonna lie. And it's also really wonderful to see an older protagonist as a series lead. And I loved it. Without question. I love the entire thing. I really spaced out watching it. And I watched it like I would watch like a favorite movie. You know what I mean? I would make sure that this the time was good and I wasn't going to be interrupted or whatever like that. I set the stage a little bit and made it a bit of an event. So it took me a while to get through it, but it was worth it. And it was so good. It was so good. So I loved it. And then another series, which is just totally kind of random and I don't have much to say, so I'm just going to say that I watched it so that for the next time I do this video, I know where I left off. And that is Spider-Woman. Unfortunately, I couldn't get a really good picture for Spider-Woman, so this is, I don't know why it says Bionic Disco. I have no idea what that's about, but I cannot find a lot of pictures for Spider-Woman. So Spider-Woman is an animated TV series from the 70s that's available on Disney, and I randomly started watching it, I don't know, last year sometime, and I watched it now I like having a show to watch in the background while I'm doing like food prep and doing when I get back from getting groceries and stuff like that, because it's a bit of, it takes a fair amount of time to do all the things. So I just, I was watching Deep Space Nine, but it got to a heavy episode, so I didn't want to, I just couldn't watch it in the background. So I watched Spider-Woman. So I flew through it. The episodes are like 20 minutes or less because it's an animated show. It's not great. It's unfortunate because it's one of those things so you have a female lead in a superhero situation, which is supposed to be awesome, but there's so many moments where it's like she can't take credit or has to pretend that she's, in peril, or it ends up, looking like someone else, usually like a guy, ended up resolving the situation, and she was, at that moment she was kidnapped, oh no, and had to be saved. It was just there was so much horrible gender crap around it, and it's just and it's a female superhero. She does all of the action and gets none of the credit. So thankfully, I feel like hopefully we've come a very far way from that being the step or the new or the progression of inclusion, because it was pretty bad. So, and it's also weird, I mostly, because I was doing other things while I was watching it, I was mostly listening to it, which is funny to do for an animated show. It works for this because I wasn't familiar with any of the actors, but I've tried it sometimes with animated film, and it doesn't work because I start to see the actor if I know who the actor is, and as opposed to the animated character. So anyway, so that was just a fun sort of just throw on in the background kind of show, and I did finish it. The first season, it's one season only, and it's 16 episodes or something like that, so I very quickly had to go back and find something else, and I think I finally finished that one tough episode of Deep Space Nine, and then I'm back to watching that as my grocery meal prep TV show. And it's not my first. I think it's at least my second rewatch, might be my third. We shall see. So let me know, have you watched any of these shows? Do you ever, with me and Sherlock, end up getting to something 10 years later? I'm trying to, I can't remember that actor's name. I don't know the actor's name off the top of my head. I looked it up, and I followed the breadcrumbs there, and it was worth it. It was worth it, but that was tough. There were actually a fair amount of tough stuff here. I feel like I need to pick some lighter shows, but I don't tend to watch comedies, so it leaves me in a bit of a pickle. So let me know your thoughts on these shows. Have you seen any of them? Will you try them out? What's something that you finished and enjoyed on streaming recently? And I'll be back soon on another video. Thanks so much for watching.